This July was supposed to be exceptional, and one thing is certain, it lived up to my expectations. And even though many people were frustrated by the very subtle post-credits scene with Victor Von Fatalis, it actually says a lot regarding where Phase 6 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is headed. It doesn't just answer the question of where this Victor comes from. It also eliminates several theories, and paves a much clearer path for the future of the new Marvel Universe. But that's not all, because I repeat, I see the Fantastic Four movie as a real gateway for new fans. A movie that leaves behind the 200 hours of accumulated Marvel Cinematic Universe content and all the legacy that comes with it, to immerse us in a whole new beginning. Centered around Doom, the Fantastic Four, and later the X-Men, a complete renewal of a Marvel Universe to be rebuilt. Because with the Fantastic Four, and by extension Superman at Detective Comics, we finally got something new. Movies with a completely changed visual and narrative identity. Projects that finally dared to embrace the renewal of the comic book movie genre, making them look like comic books from a flamboyant, colorful, and imaginative geek culture. A culture that no longer tries to stick to reality, but instead immerses us in pure imagination, just like the comics we love so much. But these projects above all mark the beginning of a new era, and for me, this new beginning goes beyond just a simple change of direction. It's a true reset. In what the introduction of Doom, through this post-credit scene, reveals to us, about the character's future, his connection with Reed Richards, and how together they will bring an end to the multiverse. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the Fantastic Four and what comes next, so I'm warning you, we're entering the spoiler zone, the danger zone. You're with Kevin Burkhardt, your favorite theorist of Tony Stark, who actually was never Tony Stark. Credits subtitles by Jeremy Diaz. Alright, let's get back to a brand new day before we dive into Victor Van Doom. By the way, get used to it, I like to call him Doom, so it'll be Doom. I'd like to quickly come back to this idea of a fresh start. The movie The Fantastic Four is already an achievement in my eyes, simply because it's a bold gamble that paid off. A lot of people don't necessarily realize that. But everything in this movie could have gone wrong. The casting, the retrofuturistic universe, the very unique aesthetic, and of course, Galactus. A single misstep and everything could have felt off. And yet, no, it works. But above all, as I said in the introduction, what I liked was this feeling of a beginning, a real character presentation, a true introduction, a new start. Because following the many failures of the Chapek era, especially driven by a frantic production policy, with the launch of Disney+, Disney reformed the Bob Iger-Kevin Feige duo in 2022. With a single motto, less quantity, more quality, but above all, fewer assignments to do. And this Fantastic Four movie inaugurates this new strategy by marking a real break, a new entry point. Certainly, the real renewal of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will begin after Secret Wars, which, as confirmed by Kevin Feige, will mark a reset. But for me, the Fantastic Four is kind of the starting point for all of this, a sort of prequel to this soft reboot. It introduces us to main characters from Doomsday and Secret Wars, the future leaders of tomorrow's Marvel Universe. Whether it's Reed and his family or Victor Von Doom, teased at the very end of the movie, and we often forget to talk about the movie's title, First Step or Premier Pas in French. So yes, obviously it's a reference to Franklin, but not only that, I'm convinced it's a nod to tell us that this movie is the very first of the new Marvel Cinematic Universe. And let's be clear, when I talk about a new universe, it's because Secret Wars is going to kick off the start of the soft reboot, a moment that will mark a real split within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that we've known between 2008 and 2026 with the destruction of the multiverse and the post-Secret Wars universe, created from 2027 onward. When Kevin Feige talked about a reset because he thinks the word reboot is scary, I call that a soft reboot. And to put it simply for you, this new universe will be a bit like Superman at Detective Comics, a universe where the heroes have existed for a long time, with a story much closer to that of the comics. Because until now, the Marvel Cinematic Universe of the Eternal Timeline has always been centered on the Avengers. But the Marvel Universe in the comics is infinitely larger. The difference between a reboot and a soft reboot is that a reboot resets absolutely everything. New stories, new actors, everything starts from scratch, like what James Gunn is doing with his universe. DC here, that's not the case. Secret Wars will act as a bridge and create a selection. There will first be the characters who are kept, for example some Thunderbolts, Moon Knight, maybe Captain Marvel or She-Hulk. Characters who will have no memory of their past life and who will have a second chance to be completely reinvented. Then, there will be new characters, heroes who were missing from the old universe, for reasons that we will explore a little later. Here, we're mainly talking about mutants, but possibly also about Ghost Rider or other galactic heroes. Some can be integrated directly through Secret Wars, while others will simply already exist in this new universe, like the Justice Gang in Superman. They exist, that's all. On top of that, there are the recasts. Kevin Feige confirmed that this new universe can't do without iconic characters like the Avengers. That's why he confirmed that Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, or even T'Challa will be recast. But be careful, they won't have the same role as in the Infinity Saga. They'll exist in the background, take part, but probably won't get a new origin story, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Finally, let's talk about those who will bridge the gap between the old and the new. Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Fantastic Four are called First Step, and Spider-Man is titled Brand New Day. These are the only two films from Phase 6 announced before the reset that the Avengers movies will bring. The Spider-Man movie is, according to rumors, a street-level story and not a multiversal one. But it will completely redefine the character, giving him a much more mature role and one much closer to the comics. For me, this Brand New Day is more like the first film of a new trilogy than a Spider-Man 4. I don't see it as a direct sequel to No Way Home. Yes, they'll probably mention May's death and the fact that he lost everything. But according to the latest leaks, the movie would take place at the end of 2027. That's 3 years after the events of the last movie. It would take place in the same year as Captain America, Brave New World, Thunderbolts, or the 2 seasons of Daredevil, Born Again. But about a year before Doomsday and the post-credits scene of Thunderbolts. Alright, so far so good. I haven't lost you. You should know that the first 3 Spider-Man movies followed each other pretty quickly. Well, sure, there's the blip in between, but overall, these are Peter and Spider-Man's high school years. Brave New Day is, as its name suggests, a whole new day for the character. A kind of soft reboot where he can finally break away from his first trilogy, and where we find him in New York, living alone for the past 3 years. So, personally, I have a hard time imagining that during those 3 years, he got back together with Mary Jane. Anyway, I don't want that to happen, so it won't. There you go, I'm just telling you, that's all, right? He'll probably be in college or maybe even already graduated, and we'll find that Spider-Man we knew from the Sam Raimi movies, struggling and on his own. Well, maybe he'll even have made new friends who might change completely after the reboot. Imagine, at college, he meets a certain Harry Osborn, who, in this universe, is just a totally ordinary guy, and who, after Secret Wars, would become the son of a big industrialist, president of Oscorp. Interesting, right? But let's get back to this bridge story. Insiders say Reed will be a key leader in the Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret Wars movies. He'll be alongside Thor, and I would add Peter and to a lesser extent Sam. Together, they will be the ones who help Doom, or even cause the end of the multiverse manipulated by him, before doing everything they can to fix their mistakes in Secret Wars. They might also serve as guardians of this knowledge. Those who know that another reality, prior to the one created at the end of Secret Wars, once existed, and that a multiversal war must never happen again. And all of this, of course, is directly connected to the post-credits scene of the Fantastic Four, to this Doom. Now, I'm warning you, we're going into full analysis and theory. The real Dr. Doom. Let's get to the most important and interesting part of this video. Congrats if you're still watching, feel free to subscribe and support. It helps the video get promoted by the algorithm, and it's the best reward for the work done on this channel. Well, as I was saying, this post-credits scene, which seems harmless at first glance, actually reveals a lot of things. It confirms certain theories and, as a result, invalidates others that, I have to say, were very persistent. So, I suggest we go through this step by step. Let's sit down and dive in together, deeper and deeper. So yes, some elements were already mentioned in my last video, but today we're going much further. As Reed would say, trust me. First of all, yes. Victor Von Doom, the antagonist of the upcoming Avengers movies, does indeed come from Universe 828. Several clues confirm this. First of all, his country is represented within the Future Foundation, a kind of United Nations founded by Sue Storm. In this universe, we see it during the very first press conference. The seat of his country is empty. And it's even more obvious when the Fantastic Four make their global call for the construction of the bridges, so his universe does exist, but its ruler is absent. Next, the cartoon in post-credits scene 2 shows the Fantastic Four battling their Golden Age comic foes. And one of them is a Guardian robot, Dr. Doom's very first invention in the comics to protect Latveria. Long before the Doombots, Doom was already the ruler of this country. Another clue is that you can hear the sound of a teleport when Doom arrives near the child. In the first post-credits, Sue is about to attack, but she changes her mind, and we know very well that she could have isolated Franklin or Doom in a force field in a second if she wanted to, but she doesn't do it. We understand in the movie that Sue has a much more diplomatic role than Reed, especially in her relationships with their enemies. She's the one who maintains an alliance with Mole Man, which allows Subterranea to welcome the inhabitants of New York at the end of the movie. And since she founded the Future Foundation, she's necessarily connected to each of its representatives, so if Latveria has a seat in this chamber, it means its leader has sat there. At some point, she met Victor Van Doom. Are you following me? Let's go a bit further. The movie shows us that this version of the Fantastic Four is different, except for Pedro Pascal's mustache. Extremely comics accurate, the team seems to have exactly the same origin story as in the comics. Their first enemies, like in their very first comic, is Garganto, and the enemies shown in the cartoon are the ones from their early days. So, most likely, Reed and Ben attended the same university as Victor, and there, they probably competed with each other. Just like in the comics, Victor would also have the same origin story, the one I told you about in this video, the ultimate guide before the Fantastic Four. And by the way, let's say it, these 3 videos form an essential trilogy to really get a complete picture of the situation. So, I'm not going to repeat what I said in the other videos. Each time I'll tell you what I've already covered in the previous videos. Anyway, this Victor is indeed the original Victor, not a variant of Tony. Not a Doom from another destroyed universe, right? This is Dr. Doom from Universe 828, the one with the Fantastic Four he knows, and who is deeply connected to the team. This information was actually confirmed by the best insider, Alex Perez. So, what we know is that he simply disappeared before the events of the movie, but then, what does that imply? First, does it have a direct impact on the Tony Stark from our universe? You might know my theory, which now seems to be confirmed, that the Tony Stark we knew is actually just a variant of Victor Von Doom, adopted by the Stark family. That's why Tony had that strange reaction in the elevator in Endgame, when he heard his father say something that didn't match the version he had always known.
My wife is expecting a child, and I spend too much time at the office. Congratulations.
A scenario that would have been set up by He Who Remains, who would have created the Eternal Time Stream, in an iteration where Victor never becomes Doom but Tony Stark, and where the Fantastic Four and the X-Men simply do not exist. So yes, it's complex, but again, I'll refer you to that video that explains absolutely everything. Don't worry, I'll put all the links in the description. So no, this Doom is not a Tony Stark who changed, nor a body or mind transfer, or whatever else. Yes, because when it comes to theories, we've heard some crazy stuff. But yes, this Doom is indeed the variant of the character we've known since 2008, and maybe that's the genius of the Russo brothers. I can confirm, our Tony is truly dead, and no, he will never come back, but the variant of who he really was survived, and so yes, he is back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's a difference, of course, but fundamentally he's the same, since it's his variant, and this confirms even more that Robert Downey Jr. has always been Doom. The actor is reportedly in negotiations to stay in the Marvel Cinematic Universe after Secret Wars. Why would he keep playing Victor Von Doom? After all, he was starting to get too old to play Iron Man in action scenes, but nothing stops him from doing a Mandalorian-style role. In the comics, Dr. Doom is known for rarely, if ever, taking off his mask. He's kind of like Darth Vader, so he can be played by anyone and voiced by Robert Downey Jr. for the rest of his life. So, even though, of course, in Doomsday and Secret Wars, his face will be extremely important since it will probably be healed by Franklin's powers, and he'll cross paths with the heroes of 607 like Peter, for example. After that, it will be less necessary. But let's get back to the post-credits scene. So Sue recognizes Victor and doesn't act. Yet, for weeks, insiders were buzzing about spoiling this scene, which was supposedly shown during the only test screening in Los Angeles. They described a menacing Doom leaning over Franklin's crib, a Doom who supposedly kidnapped the child. Well, that's not at all what we saw. Apparently the scene was reshot, notably by the Russo brothers, and everything is done to make us understand that this Doom is not a threat. He seems to come to talk with his old enemies, the Fantastic Four, and if he comes to see Sue and not Reed, that's not by chance. The movie showed us how much Sue plays a key role in talking with enemies. For example, with the scene with Mole Man, and in the comics, her relationships don't stop there. She develops a very close relationship with Namor, and, through her daughter Valeria, she considers Doom almost a full-fledged member of the family. He is actually Valeria's godfather, and he was the one who chose her name as a tribute to Victor's first love, so I think Victor comes here to seek the team's help. And Doomsday and Secret Wars, which we struggle to understand, will be more faithful to the comics than expected. Most importantly, these two movies will focus on the relationship between Reed and Victor. This will reassure fans who feared these two characters would be strangers, even though their comic interactions are among the most interesting. And let me tell you, this promises some absolutely thrilling scenes in the upcoming Avengers, but also in the future of this new Marvel Cinematic Universe, the direct impact in Doomsday. Many people were frustrated not to see more in this post-credits scene, especially because of the lack of a direct connection with the Thunderbolts one, but in reality, it makes perfect sense. Saying more would already be spoiling Doomsday, because it would mean defining Doom's position way too early, and you'll see that these two scenes, in fact, complement each other perfectly. I think Doom is trying to meet Reed to talk to him about what he discovered. If he was absent during the Galactus events, it's because he had already started his multiversal quest, just like Reed. He's a scientist who pushes the boundaries of existence, but on top of that, he mixes it with a mystical dimension. We still don't know what triggered his journey. Maybe a visit from a variant of Kang, but there's a good chance he found a way to discover the plan of these famous Kang. And above all, the beginning of the multiversal war that will lead to the collapse of the multiverse. It's probably one of these variants who will steal the interdimensional travel technology. On his side, we know that Reed is also aware of the multiverse. He briefly talks about it in a show with children, and he describes Galactus as a being from another universe, or even another reality. And this scene, as YouTuber Thetnofnerd pointed out, is a little joke that really reflects the Marvel fatigue around the multiverse. While Reed tries to explain how it works to a class of children, everyone is bored. He ends up asking, who wants to see an explosion, and then all the kids jump for joy. A nod, perhaps, to the fact that Marvel probably won't really try to explain its complex multiverse anymore, and that they'll end up focusing only on the action, because that's what you want. In short, Doom could reveal to Reed that the multiverse is dying, and that all of this is connected to a single timeline, the Eternal Time Stream. A universe controlled by a variant of Kang, who created a history without the Fantastic Four or mutants. And where he himself, Victor Von Doom, was manipulated to become another man, a certain Iron Man. By the way, there's a very old rumor that in Doomsday, we might see the events of the first film, Iron Man, again, but seen from the outside, seen through the eyes of a Doom who has traveled in this universe. But what Victor Reed reveals is that time is running out. This variant of Kang could return to his throne and reset the loop, recreating this eternal time flow once again at the expense of all the other universes. To understand all this, you really need to have the Loki series in mind. Okay, let me give you a quick summary. After the events of Endgame, Loki escapes with the Tesseract and is captured by the Time Variance Authority, an organization beyond time and the multiverse assigned to stop new universes from forming via Nexus events. Basically, deviations from the script of the eternal time flow. But Loki traces it back and discovers the creator of this system, a variant of Kang, Nathaniel Richards, nicknamed He Who Remains. He's the architect of a time loop that always leads back to his own domination. Sylvie kills him, Loki takes his place and becomes the god of stories, but no one knows if he's just continuing his role in the loop or if he managed to break it. What we do know, however, is that the multiversal war seems to have started again, and that the multiverse is once again falling apart. So Doom's plan would be to prevent this, and he would take Reed and his family along on this adventure. And what better way to recreate multiversal technology than to use that of a being from another reality? Because yes, Galactus may have been pushed to the other end of the galaxy, but he left his ship in orbit around Earth. This will allow Reed not only to study its technology, but also, very likely, to uncover some of its secrets. The movie could therefore focus much more on the relationship between Reed and Victor, which would naturally allow for the development of Doom's origin story by first positioning him as a genuine ally. The two of them, working together, would then recreate a new ship just like in the good old days and set out to conquer the universe. 616. Once they arrive, Earth has already undergone several incursions, mainly because of the various journeys between dimensions. Do you remember Doctor Strange? Wanda Monica Doom, who, let me remind you, has Stark's face, and the Fantastic Four then try to convince the local heroes that the multiverse is in danger. Doom has identified the X-Men universe as the next major incursion, and this one could be fatal to the multiverse. Since this incursion was caused by a member of 616 traveling to this X-universe, and it's absolutely crucial that the eternal flow of time doesn't disappear. A team is then sent into this universe to confront the X-Men, but the latter, extremely defensive, attack first. Because, as we already know, the introduction of the movie should show Doom attacking the X-Mansion with Sentinels, a scene that has already been filmed. We could even imagine that to hide the fact that it's Doom and give us a bit more suspense. He used Dark Avengers recruited from the multiverse to pit his X-Men against the 616 team invading them, creating total chaos where no one understands anything, and that's where the twist is revealed. Victor isn't completely an ally. Like in any good Doom story, he defends his own interests first. He's not just trying to save the multiverse, he's trying to save what little can still be saved and to dominate it. He could then capture Franklin, as well as the most powerful characters from the X-Men and Avengers universes, and bring them to Loki with the goal of stealing their power. Or even better, we could imagine a dilemma where his strategy, which is the lesser evil, doesn't have everyone's support. But it's necessary to save the multiverse, giving some heroes like Strange or even Peter the opportunity to join him. We'll see the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four having to stop him, because Doom is determined to destroy the multiverse in an attempt to save it. But the multiple journeys between universes have caused huge incursions between the three realities. We know that one team will even have scenes in the Fantastic Four's universe, since Kevin Feige himself confirmed that the film's set had welcomed many other characters from the Avengers universe. While most of the heroes face the incursions and the threats unleashed by Doom to slow them down, a small team goes after him through Reed's famous bridge, upgraded with multiversal technology from Doom and Galactus. He first teleports to the Time Variance Authority, then to the Void, before arriving too late at the Citadel at the end of time, where the god of stories Loki once sat. They can only watch, powerless, as the multiverse is destroyed. End of the movie, a narrative structure that could highlight the fact that, yes, the Fantastic Four are truly the beginning of this new universe, since this is where the story would start, before continuing in the 616, putting the Marvel Cinematic Universe we've always known in the background, but for how long? Secret Wars. So this movie would have shown Doom as an ally for most of the story, before he betrays everyone to serve his own interests, exactly like in the comics. And that's where it would be really interesting to have a movie between Doomsday and Secret Wars, the famous Doctor Strange. 3 time runs out, for example, which would go back over all the journey Doom went through across the multiverse to understand the sacrifices he needs to make to save it. Will they do it? Let's imagine this movie comes out in the summer of 2027. Everything is still possible. But let's move on to Secret Wars because, as I was saying, Reed and Doom will be the real center of this renewal in the comics. The last 2 surviving universes build lifeboats to preserve a few heroes who are able to remember the worlds that existed before. This concept could be replaced by the team that went after Doom and ended up trapped in the multiverse's citadel outside of time, where Loki was seated. At the moment of the multiverse's collapse, Doom absorbs the powers of the most powerful characters from these 3 universes, as well as Loki's powers. And with all that, he creates a new world, made up of fragments from the last surviving universes, the Battleworld. A world populated by variants, plunged into collective amnesia, where Doom is worshipped as a god emperor, and no one remembers their former life anymore. And I have to admit, I had a hard time imagining how Marvel would be able to adapt Secret Wars, because it's exactly the kind of run where anything is possible and anything can happen. But now, everything seems clearer. Even though it's a gargantuan event, it will above all be an intimate personal confrontation between Reed and Victor, just like in Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars. And by the way, the concept art that leaked showed it very clearly. As in the comics, Doom will probably make Sue and Franklin his own family, artificially recreating what he lacks. Which once again proves the heartbreaking connection he has with the Fantastic Four, and above all, the deep hatred he feels toward Reed. In this world, everyone suffers amnesia and is controlled by an omnipotent Doom, except for one team that survives to the end. I think it will be made up of Reed, Thor, Spider-Man, Deadpool's team, and Loki. And maybe also some figures from the Avengers and the X-Men, like Hulk or Cyclops when they arrive on Battleworld. Their mission will be to launch a rebellion against Doom to try to cut off his access to his source of power. And that's where we could meet the future figures of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thor, for example, could go look for new variants of the Avengers, while Cyclops could recruit new ones. X-Men, Hulk, an army of Hulks, Spider-Man from the Spider-Man, Spider-Totem, and so on. You get the idea? Altogether, they would launch an assault on Doom's castle, while Reed would infiltrate it to confront Victor directly. In the comic, this confrontation turns into a physical and verbal clash of incredible dramatic power. Doom ends up asking Reed, "Do you think you could have done better?" And Reed answers, "Yes, and we both know it, don't we?" To which Doom retorts, disgusted, "Obviously I hate you, and this hatred, this acknowledgement, is enough to break his power." Doom instantly loses the abilities that Molecule Man had given him in the comics, and gives them to Reed, who, with his help and his sons, recreates the multiverse. We don't know how the movie will handle this, but such an epic moment will surely happen, and a new universe will be born. fairer, more balanced, mixing the remnants of the destroyed old universes. A universe where the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and the characters from 616 will coexist as if they always had. A universe where some heroes will remember the day the multiverse was destroyed, and among them, I think we'll see Thor, who seems set to stay in the role for a long time. And who could found a new Asgard on the ashes of Ragnarok? But also Spider-Man, who, after being forgotten by everyone, will have literally saved the multiverse. He will now carry more than ever the weight of that phrase. With great power comes great responsibility, and he will no doubt be ready to train a new generation of spider heroes. But above all, Reed and Franklin, who will become the absolute pillars of this new universe, and who will do everything to make sure this never happens again. And that's most certainly what will lay the foundation for the next big saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but not without consequences, the new Saga. I've been telling you for months about the next Marvel Cinematic Universe after Secret Wars, and now insiders are confirming what I've said. The new saga will revolve around three main themes. It will be galactic, mutant, and supernatural. Reed and Franklin could have a huge impact on it. Let's start with the galactic saga. Everything seems to indicate that a new threat has emerged in this new universe, Annihilus. The warlord leads a destructive insectoid army. He is the greatest war chief of the negative zone, and if that name doesn't ring a bell, that's normal. It's Reed who discovers this zone first in the comics, and it quickly becomes one of the main locations for his experiments. So it could be that this new threat, Annihilus, is from another universe because of Reed himself. That could totally be the theme of the second Fantastic Four movie, which will come out in 2028 if we believe it, Kevin Feige. But that's not all. Because, just like Tony in his time, Reed will no doubt come out deeply traumatized from this multiversal war, of which he is one of the only ones to remember. And he will want at all costs to make sure it never happens again, except that his son, Franklin, who has formed a very strong bond with Victor. In the comics, his sister, not him, stops his father from feeling relieved at Secret War's end. On the contrary, he will also offer him a place in this new universe, on his throne, in his homeland, with no memory of what happened, a second chance given by Franklin. Reed could then decide to reuse the bridge technology to observe the consequences of their actions on the future and on the multiverse. And that's where he could discover the Council of Reeds, an assembly of versions of himself, all determined to do one thing, save the multiverse, but very quickly. Is extreme. He wants to do good, of course, but he's ready to sacrifice everything for peace, a council that, in the end, could appear as a new threat. On his side, Franklin, a mutant child with infinite cosmic power, decides to give mutants a central place in this new world. He chooses to include the X-Men he met in Battleworld and spreads the X gene everywhere, so he won't be the only mutant in his universe anymore. A gesture that will also cause serious problems in the afterlife, especially for Mephisto. Because yes, many insiders confirmed today that Marvel really wants to develop a supernatural storyline, and that they have chosen to adapt the Damnation run in this comic. A catastrophe devastates Las Vegas, killing thousands of people. But Doctor Strange, refusing to accept this outcome, decides to reverse the course of these events, cancels it, and resurrects everyone with a spell. Except that Vegas is the capital of sin. Already descended into hell, Mephisto then feels robbed. He builds a demonic casino in the heart of Las Vegas to welcome the damned and unleashes hell on Earth. Accusing Strange of having violated a natural law, that's when the Midnight Suns are called in to stop him. And it's entirely possible that the creation of this new universe, following the end of Secret Wars, could have a similar effect. By bringing back to life people who had died in the old multiverse, the heroes would have attracted the wrath of Mephisto, who considers that those souls belong to him. In short, as you can see, this post-credit scene from the Fantastic Four is much more than just a green hood. It leads us straight to Doomsday and has allowed us to solve a lot of mysteries about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, theoretically, of course. But above all, it marks the beginning of a new Marvel universe, starting now, without waiting for the end of Secret Wars, a universe where the Fantastic Four will have a huge impact. If you enjoyed this long theory, don't hesitate to give it a little boost and subscribe. Like I said, it's part of a trilogy of videos that I'm putting right here for you. We'll see each other next week for a video about Reed the Psychopath. Meanwhile, remember to stay curious. That's the secret to happiness. Ciao.